She signed the divorce papers with a cheap ballpoint pen, while his mother laughed in the background, calling her worthless. They thought they were discarding a broke, pathetic housewife who brought nothing to the table but warm meals and laundry. They didn't know that the pen she held was worth more than their entire house. They didn't know that the company Leon was desperate to be promoted in was hers. They broke her heart, so she broke their bank accounts. This is the story of Elira Vance, the silent billionaire who taught the Sterling family a lesson they would never forget. The silence in the dining room of the Sterling estate was not peaceful. It was predatory. The clinking of silver forks against fine china sounded like swords being sharpened. Elira sat at the far end of the mahogany table, her eyes fixed on her plate of roasted asparagus. She could feel the heat of 3 pairs of eyes burning into her: her husband, Leon, his mother, Beatrice, and his younger sister, Chloe. "Leon, darling," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with that sickeningly sweet tone she reserved for her son, while her eyes darted venomously toward Elira. "I heard the merger with Vance Global is entering the final stages. Surely this means the promotion is guaranteed? You'll finally be a C-suite executive." Leon Sterling wiped his mouth with a linen napkin, a smug smile playing on his lips. He was handsome in that sharp, aggressive way that corporate Manhattan adored, tall, broad-shouldered, with hair gelled back meticulously. He looked like success, or at least he looked like what he thought success looked like. "It's looking good, Mother," Leon said, reaching for his wine glass. "The board is impressed with my proposal for the automated logistics division. Once the Vance acquisition is finalized, I'll be running operations for the entire East Coast. It's a multi-million-dollar bump." Finally, Chloe chimed in, scrolling through her phone without looking up. "Maybe now you can afford a vacation home in the Hamptons like Sophia's brother. It's embarrassing that we still have to rent during the summer." Elira flinched slightly. Sophia. The name had been coming up more and more lately. Sophia Miller, the vice president of marketing at Leon's firm. Beautiful, ambitious, and from good stock, as Beatrice liked to say. Everything Elira supposedly wasn't. "Elira!" Beatrice snapped, noticing the flinch. "Don't look so sour. You should be grateful. Leon's hard work pays for the roof over your head and the clothes on your back, dull as they are." She gestured vaguely at Elira's simple grey cardigan. "Honestly, if you're going to be the wife of a VP, you need to step it up. You look like the help." "I like this cardigan," Elira said softly. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "And I support Leon. I always have." "Support?" Leon scoffed, slamming his glass down a little too hard. The sound echoed through the room. "Elira, let's be real. You stay at home. You garden. You read books. You don't have the first clue what it takes to survive in my world. Support is securing a meeting with the investors. Support is networking at the gala. You just exist." The air left the room. Elira looked up at her husband of 5 years. 5 years of cooking his meals, ironing his shirts, listening to his anxieties at 2 a.m., and quietly fixing his grammatical errors in his reports before he submitted them. "Is that all I am to you, Leon?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Dead weight?" Leon sighed, a long, exasperated sound, as if dealing with her was the most exhausting part of his day. He reached under his chair and pulled out a manila envelope. He slid it across the polished mahogany. It stopped inches from her hand. "I didn't want to do this over dinner," Leon said, his face hardening. "But there's never a good time. Sophia and we have a vision. We're a power couple. She challenges me. She elevates me. You hold me back." Elira stared at the envelope, Divorce papers. It's generous, Beatrice interjected eagerly, leaning forward. We're letting you keep the Prius, and Leon is offering a settlement of $50,000. That's more money than someone of your background would see in a decade. You're firing me, Elira said, a strange calmness washing over her. Like an employee. I'm upgrading my life, Elira, Leon said, cold, devoid of emotion. I need a wife who fits the Sterling brand. The merger with Vance Global is huge. I can't walk into those meetings with a nobody on my arm. Sophia knows the CEO of Vance Global personally. She's going to introduce me. What can you do? Bake cookies? Chloe giggled. She makes good cookies, to be fair. But yeah, Leon needs a queen, not a maid. Elira looked at them, really looked at them. She saw Beatrice's greedy eyes, counting Leon's future money. She saw Chloe's vacuous vanity, and she saw Leon, a man whose entire career was built on a foundation of confidence she had quietly poured for him. They had no idea. You want me to sign these now? Elira asked. Ideally, Leon said, clicking a gold-plated pen and setting it on top of the papers. I want this clean. No lawyers dragging it out. You sign, you take the check, and you leave tonight. I have an early morning briefing. Elira picked up the pen. It felt heavy. For a second, she thought about screaming. She thought about throwing the wine in his face and telling him that the CEO of Vance Global Sophia claimed to know was a figurehead and the real power sat right in front of him. But she didn't. Disrespect this deep didn't deserve an explanation. It deserved a reckoning, and reckonings were best served cold. She opened the folder. She didn't read the terms. She flipped to the back page, signed Elira Vance in her elegant, looping script, and closed the folder. Done, she said. The Sterling family looked stunned. They expected begging. They expected tears. They expected a scene. Just like that? Leon asked, almost disappointed he didn't get to lecture her more. Just like that, Elira stood up. I'll pack my things. Make sure you only take what's yours, Beatrice barked. I don't want any of the sterling silver missing. Elira turned at the doorway, looking back at the three people who had been her world for 5 years. Don't worry, Beatrice. I have no interest in anything that belongs to this family. You can keep the silver. You're going to need it. She walked out of the dining room, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. The master bedroom felt suffocating. Elira pulled her battered suitcase from the back of the closet, the same suitcase she had arrived with 5 years ago. She packed efficiently. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 sweaters, her toiletries, a framed photo of her late father. She left the jewelry Leon had bought her, the small diamond studs for their first anniversary, the thin gold chain. They were trinkets, tokens of ownership, not love. She placed them on the dresser next to the divorce papers. She changed out of the grey cardigan and into a black trench coat she had kept hidden in the back of the wardrobe. It was sleek, tailored, and cost more than Leon's car. It was a remnant of her old life, the life she had paused to see if she could find happiness in simplicity. She hadn't. Dragging the suitcase down the stairs, she heard the laughter from the dining room. They were toasting, celebrating her exit. Finally free of the leech, she heard Leon say. Elira opened the heavy front door and stepped out into the cool autumn air. The Sterling estate was modest by billionaire standards, but Leon acted like it was Versailles. She walked down the long driveway, the gravel crunching beneath her boots. She didn't look back. Not once. As she reached the iron gates at the end of the property, she pulled a sleek, encrypted smartphone from the inner pocket of her trench coat. It was a device Leon had never seen. She dialed a single number. It rang once. Mrs. Vance. A deep, gravelly voice answered immediately. Status? It's done, Marcus, Elira said, her voice shifting. Gone was the soft-spoken housewife. In her place was the steel-spined matriarch of an empire. The papers are signed. I am no longer a Sterling. I'm sorry it ended that way, Elira, Marcus said, his tone softening slightly. Marcus Thorne was her chief legal officer and her father's most trusted confidant. He was the only one who knew the full extent of her experiment in normalcy. Don't be, Elira replied, watching a pair of headlights cut through the darkness down the road. It was an educational 5 years. I learned exactly what kind of man Leon is. And I learned that my family's company has been considering a merger with a nest of vipers. Shall I cancel the acquisition of Sterling Dynamics? Marcus asked. No, Elira said, a cold smile touching her lips as a convoy of 3 black Escalades pulled up to the curb. The lead driver, a massive man in a dark suit, stepped out and opened the rear door for her. Let the acquisition proceed, but change the terms. I want to personally oversee the integration. And Marcus? Yes, Mum. I want a full audit of Leon Sterling's department. Every expense report, every email, every client interaction from the last 5 years. If he's been stepping out with Sophia Miller on company time, I want to know about it. I want to know everything. Understood. We'll have the dossier on your desk by morning. Elira slid into the leather interior of the Escalade. The air smelled of expensive cedar and silence. It was a far cry from the stale air of Leon's Honda Civic. Where to, Miss Vance? The driver asked. The penthouse at 432 Park Avenue, Elira said, leaning back and closing her eyes. And then, get me the file on the Sterling Dynamics upcoming winter gala. I think it's time the CEO of Vance Global finally made an appearance. As the convoy sped away toward the glowing skyline of New York City, Elira Vance shed the skin of the unwanted wife. She wasn't just a woman scorned, she was a shark re-entering the water. And Leon Sterling had just cut himself and jumped in. Back at the house, Leon was pouring another glass of champagne. To the future, he toasted, clinking glasses with his mother. To Sophia, to the merger, and to finally getting the respect I deserve. To the future, Beatrice grinned. They drank, oblivious to the tsunami that was already forming, heading straight for their little island of arrogance. 3 weeks had passed since Elira left the Sterling estate, and the silence she left behind was beginning to scream. Monday morning in the Sterling household was usually a well-oiled machine. Coffee was brewed by 6 a.m., shirts were pressed and hanging by the door, and a healthy breakfast was plated. But this Monday, the house smelled of burnt toast and stale perfume. Leon stood in the kitchen, wrestling with the espresso machine Elira had bought. He had never actually used it. It had just always produced coffee. Now it hissed at him like an angry cat, spitting out a watery brown sludge. "Damn it!" Leon cursed, wiping hot water off his hand. "Sophia, have you seen my navy tie? The silk one?" Sophia Miller walked into the kitchen, not in a rush, scrolling through Instagram. She was wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than Elira's entire wardrobe, but she hadn't lifted a finger to help the household run. "I'm not your maid, Leon," Sophia said, lazily, picking up an apple and taking a bite. "Check the laundry pile. I think the housekeeper quit yesterday." "The housekeeper didn't quit," Leon muttered, searching frantically through a basket of wrinkled clothes. "We don't have a housekeeper. Elira was the housekeeper." "Well, hire one," Sophia snapped, her eyes narrowing. "I didn't move in here to scrub floors or iron your shirts. I have a career to manage. Speaking of which, we need to leave in 10 minutes. I have a brunch meeting with the PR team." Leon found the tie. It was wrinkled. He tried to smooth it out with his hand, sweat beading on his forehead. "I have the quarterly review with the board today, Sophia. The Vance Global merger is stalling. They're asking for updated financials. I don't know what that means. Elira always organized the tax documents." "Stop talking about her," Sophia said, her voice sharp. "She's gone. You're with a winner now. Just bluff your way through it. That's what executives do." Leon rushed out the door, looking disheveled. The confidence he had at the dinner table 3 weeks ago was beginning to crack. At the office, things were worse. Leon sat in his glass-walled office, staring at a spreadsheet that made no sense. For 5 years he would bring work home, and Elira, who he claimed just read books, would glance at his screens and say things like, "Leon, column B doesn't match the fiscal projection in column F. You're off by 12%. He had always assumed it was luck or common sense. Now, staring at the raw data without her invisible safety net, he realized he was drowning. His intercom buzzed. It was his boss, Mr. Henderson. "Sterling, get in here. Now." Leon gulped, straightened his wrinkled tie, and walked into the CEO's office. Mr. Henderson looked furious. He threw a report onto the desk, the report Leon had submitted yesterday. "Is this a joke, Leon?" Henderson barked. "Sir?" "Grammatical errors, calculation mistakes. You cited a tax law that expired in 2019. Who wrote this? An intern?" I was in a rush, sir. The transition. I don't care about your personal life. We are on the brink of the biggest merger in this company's history with Vance Global. The new CEO of Vance is rumored to be a shark. If they see incompetence like this, they will eat us alive. Fix it, or you're out." Leon walked back to his desk, his hands shaking. He pulled out his phone to text Elira, to beg her to just look at one file, but stopped. He had blocked her number. And she had changed hers. That evening, the atmosphere at the Sterling house was toxic. Beatrice had come over for dinner, expecting her usual Tuesday roast. Instead, she found takeout boxes from a Thai restaurant scattered on the dining table. "Takeout?" Beatrice sniffed, picking up a plastic fork with disdain. "Leon, is this how we're living now?" "Sophia worked late," Leon said defensively, pouring himself a large whiskey. "I'm the VP of marketing, Beatrice," Sophia said, not looking up from her phone. "I don't have time to marinate a chicken for 4 hours. Unlike your previous daughter-in-law, I actually contribute to society." Beatrice bristled. She hated Elira, but she loved the way Elira catered to her. Elira knew how to make her tea perfectly. Elira listened to her complain about her neighbors for hours. Sophia didn't even pretend to care. "Well," Beatrice said, her voice icy. "The house is a mess. There is dust on the mantelpiece, and Chloe tells me you borrowed her designer clutch without asking." "I improved the clutch by being seen with it," Sophia shot back. "Enough!" Leon slammed his hand on the table. "Both of you, stop. I am under enough pressure. The Vance deal is weird. They're auditing everything. They're digging into my personal expense accounts from 3 years ago. Why would they do that?" Sophia froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Expense accounts?" "Yeah." Leon rubbed his temples. "Remember that trip we took to Cabo? The one I expensed as a client acquisition retreat?" "Leon, you said that was buried," Sophia hissed, her eyes darting to Beatrice. "It was. But the Vance auditors are like bloodhounds. If they find out I used company funds for our affair, I could be fired. I could be sued." Beatrice dropped her fork. "You embezzled money? To take her to the beach?" "It was an investment in my happiness," Leon shouted. "It was stupid," Beatrice yelled back. "Elira would never have let you do something so reckless." The name hung in the air. For the first time, it wasn't spoken with disdain, but with a pang of regret. Elira was the shield that had protected them from their own incompetence, and they had thrown her away. While the Sterling household descended into chaos, Elira Vance stood 40 floors above Manhattan, looking out at the city that lay at her feet. The penthouse at 432 Park Avenue was a masterpiece of minimalist design. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and art that belonged in museums. Elira held a crystal tumbler of sparkling water, dressed in a silk blouse and tailored trousers that screamed power. She turned away from the window as Marcus Thorne entered the room. He was carrying a thick leather folder. "Good morning, Miss Vance," Marcus said, placing the folder on the glass desk. "The audit of Sterling Dynamics is complete." "And?" Elira asked, her voice cool and composed. "It's worse than we thought," Marcus said, opening the file. "Leon Sterling has been inflating his performance numbers for 3 years. He's been outsourcing his actual analysis work, likely to you, unknowingly, and claiming credit. Furthermore, we found the Cabo receipts, 5-star resort, champagne, spa treatments, all charged to the Client Development Fund. He listed the client as S. Miller Consulting." Elira laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Sophia, he didn't even try to hide it. He's sloppy, Elira. He's arrogant. He assumed no one would ever look close enough." Marcus paused. "The board of Sterling Dynamics is terrified of us. They're desperate for this merger to save their stock price. They have no idea you are the one holding the axe." "Good." Elira walked over to the desk and ran her hand over the file. "I want to proceed with the acquisition, but I want a restructuring clause. Once we sign, the entire executive leadership of Sterling Dynamics is subject to a performance review by the Vance CEO personally." "You're going to fire him yourself?" "No," Elira smiled dangerously. "Firing him is too easy. I'm going to make him realize that he never actually had the job. I want him to see that he was nothing without me." She picked up a heavy, cream-colored envelope from the desk. It was embossed with gold leaf. "Is the Winter Gala ready?" she asked. "Yes. It's the event of the season. Every major player in New York will be there. The Sterling family is desperate for an invite. They think it's their chance to schmooze the new owners." "Send them the invitations," Elira said. "VIP access, front row table. I want them to have the best seats in the house when the curtains open." "And the dress?" Marcus asked, a knowing twinkle in his eye. "It's arrived," Elira said, glancing toward her dressing room where a garment bag hung, protecting a gown made of midnight blue velvet and diamonds. "It's time to stop playing the grey mouse, Marcus. I'm ready to be the lion." 3 days later, the invitation arrived at Leon's office. Leon held the heavy envelope like it was a holy relic. The Vance Global Winter Gala, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, black tie. "We're in," Leon breathed, rushing into Sophia's office next door. "Sophia, look, we got the VIP invite." Sophia snatched the card, her eyes lighting up. "Finally. This is it, Leon. This is where we cement our place. I heard the CEO of Vance Global is going to make their first public appearance. If I can charm him, or her, we can bury that audit issue before it ever surfaces." "We need to look perfect," Leon said, his anxiety warring with excitement. "My mother and Chloe are invited too. Beatrice is already talking about buying a new gown on my credit card." "Let her," Sophia said, already mentally shopping for herself. "This night is going to change our lives." She was right, of course, but not in the way she thought. The night of the gala arrived with a biting cold wind, but inside the Met, the atmosphere was warm and smelling of money. The Temple of Denda was lit with soft amber lights. Waiters in white tuxedos circulated with trays of caviar and champagne. Leon, Beatrice, Chloe, and Sophia arrived in a rented limousine. They walked up the grand steps, preening for the photographers. "Stand up straight, Leon," Beatrice hissed, adjusting her sequined dress, which was a size too small. "We are sterling royalty tonight." Sophia was wearing a striking red dress, cut low, designed to grab attention. She clung to Leon's arm, whispering, "There's the chairman of Chase. There's the senator. God, Leon, we made it." They were ushered to table 1, right next to the podium. It was a place of honor. "They must really value the merger," Leon said, puffing out his chest. "They put us front and center." "Maybe the CEO has a crush on you," Chloe giggled, sipping champagne. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd of 500 of New York's elite. A spotlight hit the stage. Marcus Thorne walked out to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus's voice boomed, "welcome. For decades, Vance Global has been a silent giant. We have built the infrastructure of the future. But tonight, we turn a new page. We are acquiring Sterling Dynamics to expand our reach." Leon clapped enthusiastically, looking around to make sure people saw him. "But a company is only as strong as its leadership," Marcus continued. "And tonight, I have the distinct honor of introducing you to the chairwoman and majority shareholder of Vance Global, the woman who built this empire from the shadows." The heavy curtains behind the stage parted. "Please welcome Ms. Elira Vance." The room erupted in applause. At table 1, the Sterling family froze. Leon's clap died mid-air. Beatrice's jaw dropped, her mouth hanging open like a fish. Sophia dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the stone floor, the sound lost in the applause. Out of the shadows walked a woman. She was breathtaking. She wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves, shimmering like the night sky. Around her neck was a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that was worth more than Sterling Dynamics itself. Her hair, usually tied back in a messy bun, cascaded in sleek, dark waves down her back. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating eyes that scanned the crowd with predatory intelligence. It was Elira. But it wasn't the Elira who scrubbed floors. It was a queen. She walked to the podium, her gaze sweeping the room until it landed on table 1. She locked eyes with Leon. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply stared at him with a look of absolute, crushing superiority. "Good evening," Elira said into the microphone, her voice smooth and commanding, the voice of a woman who owned the room. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight we celebrate the shedding of dead weight and the acquisition of new assets." Leon felt the blood drain from his face. His legs turned to jelly. "Elira," he whispered, his voice cracking. That's my wife." "Ex-wife," Sophia whispered, her face pale as a sheet. "Leon, you divorced a billionaire." Beatrice looked like she was having a stroke. She clutched her pearls, gasping for air. She owns the company? She owns your company?" Elira continued her speech, charming the crowd, making jokes, discussing global economics with an ease Leon couldn't even comprehend. Every word was a dagger in his heart. As the applause thundered again, Elira stepped down from the stage. Instead of going backstage, she walked straight toward the tables. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She walked straight to table 1. Leon stood up, his knees shaking. "Elira, Elira stopped 2 feet from him. Up close, she smelled of expensive jasmine and cold, hard cash. She looked at Leon, then at Sophia, then at Beatrice. "Hello, Leon," she said coolly. "Enjoying the wine? It's a 1982 vintage. I know you prefer beer, but I thought I'd try to elevate your palate." "Elira," Beatrice stammered, trying to muster a smile. "Darling, you look magnificent. I always said you had such hidden potential." Elira laughed. It was a terrifying sound. "Save it, Beatrice. The last thing you said to me was to make sure I didn't steal the silverware." She turned her gaze to Sophia. Sophia shrank back, trying to hide behind Leon. "And Sophia," Elira said, her voice dropping an octave. "I received the audit on the Cabo trip. Client acquisition? I didn't realize you charged by the hour." The people at the nearby tables gasped. Sophia turned bright red. "What do you want?" Leon asked, his voice trembling. "I want you to enjoy the party," Elira said, leaning in close so only he could hear. "Because tomorrow morning you have a performance review, and I'm the one conducting it." She turned on her heel and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of admirers, leaving the Sterling family standing in the wreckage of their own stupidity. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Sterling Dynamics building, but inside, the temperature was sub-zero. Leon walked into the lobby wearing the same suit he had worn to the gala. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Elira in that blue dress, looking at him like he was a stain on her shoe. Or he saw the headlines on his phone. "Vance Global Heiress Reveals Identity at Met Gala," and the sub-header that made his stomach turn. "Sterling Dynamics executives caught off guard." He walked to the elevator. People whispered. The receptionist, who usually flirted with him, suddenly found her computer screen fascinating. When he reached the executive floor, he found his keycard didn't work. The red light blinked mockingly. "Access denied," a security guard said, stepping forward. It was a man Leon had ignored for 5 years. "Escort required for Mr. Sterling." "I work here," Leon snapped, though his voice lacked its usual bite. "Not until the review is over. Follow me." Leon was marched to the main conference room. Sophia was already there. She looked haggard. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. She sat at the far end of the table, tapping her foot nervously. She didn't look at him. Mr. Henderson, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, was also there, looking pale and sweating profusely. At 9:02 a.m. sharp, the double doors opened. Elira walked in. She wasn't wearing a ball gown today. She wore a sharp white power suit that made her look like a judge. Marcus Thorne walked behind her, carrying a stack of files. "Sit," Elira said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She took the seat at the head of the table, the seat Mr. Henderson usually occupied. Henderson scrambled to a side chair. "Let's begin," Elira said, opening a file. "As the new owner of Sterling Dynamics, I have initiated a redundancy protocol. We are trimming the fat, and looking at this table, there is a lot of fat." "Elira, please," Leon started, leaning forward. "Can we just talk? Privately. About us?" Elira looked up, her eyes cold. "There is no us, Mr. Sterling. There is only the employer and the employee under review. Address me as Miss Vance." She slid a document across the table. It was a spreadsheet. "Leon, for 5 years, you have been praised as a rising star in logistics. Your reports were flawless. Your projections were accurate within a 0.05% margin of error. I worked hard," Leon mumbled. "Did you?" Elira raised an eyebrow. "Because I ran a comparison. The syntax, the formatting, even the specific Excel formulas used in your reports match the style of a freelance analyst I know very well." "Me." Silence filled the room. Mr. Henderson looked at Leon in shock. "You. She did your work." "I fixed his work," Elira corrected. "Every night, while he slept, while he told his mother I was lazy. I rewrote his proposals. I corrected his math. I essentially ran his department from his kitchen table." She turned to Leon. "So I decided to test you. The report you submitted 3 days ago, the one after I left, it was a disaster. It shows you don't understand basic supply chain economics. You are incompetent, Leon." "I was stressed," Leon shouted, his face turning red. "You were exposed," Elira countered calmly. "But incompetence isn't a crime. Embezzlement is." She nodded to Marcus, who projected an image onto the wall screen. It was a receipt from the Cabo San Lucas Paradise Resort. 2 tickets, first class, 1 week in the presidential suite, charged to the client retention account, Elira read. "Sophia, who was the client?" Sophia flinched. We discussed strategy." "You discussed strategy in a jacuzzi?" Elira asked dryly. According to company policy, misuse of funds over $10,000 is grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal prosecution. "Criminal?" Sophia squeaked. "It's theft, Sophia," Marcus interjected. "We are preparing to file charges with the district attorney." Sophia stood up so fast her chair fell over. "It was his idea, Leon's. He told me it was fine. He said he did it all the time. I just went along with it." Leon stared at her, betrayed. "Sophia? You begged for that trip." "I'm just the VP of marketing," Sophia yelled, tears streaming down her face, tears of fear, not remorse. "He's the operations lead. He signed the checks. Don't put this on me." Elira watched them turn on each other with a look of mild distaste. "Pathetic." She closed the file. "I am terminating both of your contracts immediately, for cause. That means no severance package, no stock options, no references." "You can't do this," Leon whispered. "I have a mortgage. My mother. The car." "You have a mortgage based on a salary you didn't earn," Elira said. "And as for the $50,000 settlement you offered me in the divorce, I'm rejecting it. Instead, Vance Global will be suing you for the return of the embezzled funds, plus interest. That comes to roughly $85,000. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." "Elira," Leon stood up, desperation clawing at his throat. "Please. I'm your husband. Well, I was. Doesn't that mean anything?" Elira stood up, looming over him. "It meant everything to me, Leon. I loved you when you were a nobody. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted a partner. But you didn't want a partner. You wanted a prop. And when you thought the prop was broken, you threw it away." She pointed to the door. "Security will escort you out. Take your box. And Leon, if you ever come near my company or me again, I will bury you under so much litigation, your grandchildren will be paying legal fees." Leon and Sophia were escorted out of the building. As they stood on the sidewalk, holding their cardboard boxes, it started to rain. The taxi ride back to the Sterling estate was silent. Sophia refused to look at Leon. She was frantically texting on her phone. When they arrived at the house, Beatrice was waiting at the door, beaming. She clearly hadn't checked the news or heard from Leon yet. "Well?" she asked as they walked in, shaking the rain off their coats. "Did you talk to her? Did you smooth it over? Surely she realizes that family comes first. Maybe she'll give you a higher position now that we know she's the owner." Beatrice's delusion was almost impressive. "She fired me, Mother," Leon said, dropping his box on the floor. The sound was heavy and final. "Me and Sophia. Fired. For cause. We get nothing." Beatrice's smile vanished. "Fired? But we need that income. The club membership is due next week, and the payments on the Porsche." "There is no Porsche!" Leon screamed, finally snapping. "The company car is gone. The salary is gone. And she's suing us for the Cabo money." "Suing?" Beatrice grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "But we don't have $85,000 lying around." "I know." Leon paced the room, running his hands through his wet hair. "We're ruined. We have to sell the house." "Sell the house!" Beatrice shrieked. "This is the Sterling family home. It's a rental, Beatrice," Sophia suddenly shouted from the hallway. She walked in, dragging 2 large suitcases. Leon froze. "Sophia, what are you doing?" "Leaving," Sophia said coldly. She zipped up her jacket. "I just got off the phone with my uncle in Chicago. He can get me a job in his firm if I move by Monday. I'm not staying here to sink with this ship." "But we're a power couple," Leon stammered. "You said we had a vision." "The vision was you being a CEO and me being a rich wife," Sophia spat. "Now you're an unemployed fraud facing a lawsuit. You have nothing, Leon. You are nothing." "You cheater!" Beatrice yelled, lunging at Sophia. "You home-wrecker!" Sophia sidestepped her easily. "Oh, shut up, you old bat. You're the one who pushed him to dump Elira. She's too plain, Leon. She doesn't fit the brand, Leon. You created this mess. Enjoy living in poverty." Sophia walked out the door, the click of her heels echoing like gunshots. The front door slammed. Leon sank onto the sofa, burying his head in his hands. The silence in the house was heavy, broken only by the sound of the rain and Beatrice's ragged breathing. "Fix this, Leon," Beatrice hissed, her voice trembling with panic. "Call her back. Beg." "It's over, Mum." "No, go to her apartment. Remind her of the good times. She was obsessed with you. She'll take you back if you just cry a little." "She hates me." Leon looked up, his eyes hollow. "She looked at me like I was a stranger. And she was right. I never knew her. I lived with her for 5 years, and I didn't know she was a genius. I didn't know she was a billionaire. I just saw what I wanted to see." "We can't be poor, Leon," Beatrice whimpered, sitting down next to him, suddenly looking very old and frail. "What will the neighbors say?" "The neighbors?" Leon laughed, a manic, broken sound. "Mum, we're going to be lucky if we can afford an apartment in Queens. The Sterling Standard is dead." Just then, Leon's phone buzzed. It was a notification from his bank. Assets frozen pending litigation. Vance Global versus Leon Sterling. He stared at the screen. He couldn't even buy a beer to drown his sorrows. "She froze the accounts," Leon whispered. Beatrice started to cry, a loud, ugly sobbing. "She's a monster, after everything we did for her." "We didn't do anything for her, Mum," Leon said, a moment of clarity piercing through his misery. "We used her, we mocked her, and we threw her away. This is just karma." Outside, the rain intensified, washing away the facade of the Sterling life, leaving nothing but the rot underneath. 6 months in New York City can feel like a blink of an eye or an eternity, depending on which side of the glass you are standing on. For Elira Vance, it was a whirlwind of acquisitions and galas. For Leon Sterling, it was a slow, agonizing crawl through a life he never imagined he would have to live. The radiator in the cramped apartment in Queens clanged violently, a metallic coughing sound that woke Leon up every morning at 5:30 a.m. He stared at the ceiling, tracing the water stains that looked like maps of countries he would never visit. The air in the room was stale, smelling of old carpet and the boiled cabbage his mother insisted on making because it was economical. Leon rolled out of the sagging mattress. His back ached. He walked to the bathroom, avoiding the loose floorboard that creaked, and looked in the mirror. The man staring back was a ghost of the Sterling air. His skin was sallow, his eyes dull and rimmed with red. The sharp, expensive haircut was gone, replaced by a shaggy, overgrown look he couldn't afford to fix at a salon. He pulled on his work uniform, a cheap polyester blue polo shirt with the logo Big Apple Pre-Owned Autos stitched on the breast pocket. It was a size too small, cutting into his arms, a constant physical reminder of how far he had fallen. As he walked into the small kitchenette, Beatrice was already there. She was sitting at the wobbly laminate table, clutching a chipped mug of tea. She looked frail. The arrogance that had fueled her for decades had curdled into a bitter, venomous resentment. "You're late," Beatrice snapped, her voice raspy. "The landlord called again. He says if we're late with the rent next month, he's putting our things on the curb. Can you imagine? The Sterling family furniture, on a sidewalk in Queens?" "We don't have Sterling furniture, Ma," Leon said wearily, pouring instant coffee into a paper cup. "We sold the mahogany table to pay the legal fees. We sold the silver to pay the first month's deposit. All we have is IKEA stuff we bought at a thrift store." "Don't speak to me like that." Beatrice slammed the mug down. "If you had just fought harder, if you hadn't let that woman steamroll you. She was your wife, Leon. You had rights." "I had no rights to money I stole, Mother," Leon said, his voice void of emotion. He was too tired to fight. He had this conversation with her every single day. She lived in a fantasy world where Elira was the villain who had tricked them, rather than the victim they had exploited. "I'm going to work," Leon said, grabbing his coat. "Bring back something decent for dinner," Beatrice yelled after him. "I'm sick of stew. And check the lottery numbers." Leon walked out into the grey, drizzling morning. He walked past the bodegas and the laundromats, heading toward the subway. He didn't take an Uber anymore. He didn't even buy the express pass. He counted every quarter. His job at the used car lot was a special kind of hell. He spent 12 hours a day trying to convince people with bad credit to buy cars with bad transmissions. Around noon, a sleek black Mercedes pulled onto the lot. Leon straightened up. A customer with a luxury car usually meant a trade-in, which meant a decent commission. He put on his best smile, the fake one he used to wear at the Sterling galas, and walked over. The driver's door opened, and a young man stepped out. He was wearing a tailored suit, a Rolex glinting on his wrist. Leon froze. It was Brad, an intern from Sterling Dynamics, a kid Leon used to send to fetch his dry cleaning. "Leon?" Brad asked, taking off his sunglasses. His eyes widened in shock, scanning Leon's cheap polo shirt and the grime on his hands. "Leon Sterling, is that you?" Leon wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. He felt a hot flush of shame crawl up his neck. "Hey, Brad, just helping out a friend with the business. You know how it is. Keeping busy during the transition." Brad looked at the Big Apple logo on Leon's chest. He wasn't buying it. A look of pity crossed the young man's face. A look far worse than mockery. "Right," Brad said awkwardly. "Transition. Well, I actually just got promoted. VP of Logistics. Taking over your old division, actually." The breath left Leon's lungs. You got my job?" "Yeah," Brad scratched the back of his neck. "The new management, Vance Global. They're amazing. They did this massive audit. Cleared out all the dead weight. They gave me a shot to run the automated systems. It's intense, but Ms. Vance is incredible. She actually knows the metrics. It's inspiring." "That's great, Brad," Leon choked out. "Anyway," Brad backed away, suddenly desperate to leave. "I was just turning around. Wrong turn. Good seeing you, Leon. Take care." Brad jumped back into his Mercedes and sped off, leaving Leon standing in the exhaust fumes. Dead weight. That's what Brad had called the previous team. That's what Elira had called him. Leon went to the break room and sat on a plastic crate. He put his head in his hands. For years he thought he was the architect of his own success. Now, stripped of Elira's invisible support, he realized he wasn't the architect. He wasn't even the bricklayer. He was just the guy standing in front of the building, taking credit for the view. 500 miles away in Chicago, Sophia Miller was facing her own reckoning. She sat in a noisy, mid-tier bistro, picking at a salad she couldn't afford. Across from her sat a man named Gary. Gary was 55, twice divorced, and owned a chain of dry cleaners. He was currently chewing with his mouth open, talking about his jet ski. "So, babe," Gary said, winking at her. "You said you used to be a VP. What happened? Too much pressure?" Sophia forced a tight smile. She had applied to 30 firms in the last 6 months. Every interview ended the same way. They would Google her. They would see the articles about the embezzlement. They would see the scandal, and the door would close. She was toxic. In the corporate world, she was radioactive. "I decided to pivot," Sophia lied smoothly. "I wanted a slower pace." "Well, I like a girl with ambition," Gary leered, reaching across the table to grab her hand. His palms were sweaty. "Stick with me, and I'll treat you right. Maybe get you a shift managing the downtown store." Sophia looked at Gary. She looked at his stained tie. Then she thought about the life she had 6 months ago, the galas, the first-class trips, the thrill of stealing another woman's husband. She had gambled everything on Leon Sterling, thinking he was the golden ticket. She had bet on the wrong horse, and now she was in a generic bistro in Chicago, letting a man named Gary fondle her hand for the promise of a free appetizer. "Excuse me," Sophia said, standing up abruptly. "I think I'm going to be sick." She ran to the bathroom, locked the stall door, and leaned her forehead against the cold metal. She didn't cry. She was too empty to cry. She just stared at the graffiti on the wall, realizing that this was it. The elevator didn't go up anymore. It only went down. Meanwhile, 40 floors above the bustling streets of Manhattan, the air was crisp and smelled of white lilies. Elira Vance stood at the head of a massive conference table made of reclaimed obsidian. To her left sat the delegation from Tokyo. To her right, her trusted team, led by Marcus Thorne. "The terms are acceptable," the Japanese CEO said, bowing his head slightly. "Vance Global's integration strategy is visionary. We have never seen a logistics model this efficient." Elira nodded, her face calm and composed. "Efficiency is just empathy for the process, Mr. Tanaka. When you understand where the friction is, you can smooth the road. We look forward to the partnership." As the meeting dispersed and handshakes were exchanged, Marcus lingered behind. "You handled them perfectly," Marcus said, closing his folder. "That deal puts us in the top 3 conglomerates in the hemisphere. Your father would have popped a bottle of champagne by now." "We can save the champagne," Elira said, walking over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lay spread out beneath her like a circuit board. "I want to talk about the second chapter initiative." "The foundation is up and running," Marcus said, joining her. "We've already placed 50 women in housing this month, and the legal aid clinic is fully staffed. We are helping women who are exactly where you were, Elira. Women who were told they were nothing." Elira touched the glass, looking at her reflection. She didn't see the tired, grey housewife anymore. She saw a woman who had walked through fire and come out made of gold. "It's not enough to just win, Marcus," she said softly. "Winning is for the ego. Building is for the soul. I don't want to just be the woman who took down the Sterlings. I want to be the woman who made sure no other Elira ever has to endure what I did." "Speaking of the Sterlings," Marcus hesitated, "I received a notification from the legal team. The final liquidation of their assets is complete, the checks cleared, the debt is settled." Elira turned to him. "And Leon? He's working at a used car lot in Queens, living with Beatrice. It's grim, Elira. Do you want to know the details?" Elira looked at Marcus, and for a moment the room was silent. She thought about the man she had loved for 5 years. She thought about the cruelty, the dismissal, the way he had looked at her across the dinner table like she was a piece of furniture. She waited for a surge of satisfaction. She waited to feel the glee of revenge. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt a profound, peaceful indifference. Leon Sterling was no longer a villain in her story. He was just a footnote, a mistake she had made in her 20s that she had corrected in her 30s. "No, Marcus," Elira said, turning back to the spectacular view of the skyline. "I don't need the details. He is living the life he earned, and I am living the life I built. That's enough." She checked her watch, a Patek Philippe that she had bought for herself. "I have a dinner reservation with the governor to discuss urban development," she said, grabbing her clutch. "Let's go. We have a future to design." Later that evening in Queens, the rain had stopped. Leon walked into a bodega to buy milk for his mother. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of crumpled bills and coins. As he counted them out on the counter, his eyes fell on the magazine rack. There she was. Forbes. The cover. Elira was looking straight at the camera, her chin lifted, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. She looked unstoppable. The cashier, an older man named Sal, tapped the magazine. "That's a sharp lady, huh? Says here she just donated 10 million to charity. Some people have all the luck." Leon stared at the photo. His thumb brushed against the glossy paper. "It wasn't luck, Sal," Leon whispered, his voice cracking. "She did the work. She always did the work." "You know her?" Sal laughed, ringing up the milk. Leon looked at the magazine, then at his own reflection in the plexiglass partition. Tired, broken, and small. "No," Leon said, picking up his plastic bag. "I didn't know her at all." He walked out of the store and into the dark, wet street. He didn't look back. The magazine stayed on the rack, a testament to a world he had held in his hands and let slip through his fingers. Elira Vance soared among the clouds, a phoenix rising from the ashes of his betrayal. And Leon Sterling walked home to a cold apartment, finally understanding that the tragedy of his life wasn't that he lost a fortune. It was that he had held a miracle in his arms, and he had treated it like a mistake. And that is the story of Elira Vance and the Sterling family. It serves as a brutal reminder. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never judge someone by their title, or lack thereof. Leon Sterling thought he was upgrading his life, but he was holding a diamond and trading it for a piece of glass. He learned the hard way that true value isn't about status or appearances. It's about character, loyalty, and intelligence. Elira didn't just get revenge, she got justice. She proved that the best retaliation isn't screaming or fighting. It's succeeding so wildly that your ex becomes nothing more than a footnote in your biography. What did you think of Elira's revenge? Did Leon deserve his fate, or was the punishment too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button, share this video with a friend who needs a reminder of their worth, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.